Good morning, everyone. I hope this boat trip and started into the morning without too. My name is Clara. I work as a data analyst at Project A, and today I have the pleasure to share why we think that you are right now better positioned than ever to create impact, how this creation is going to look like. But before talking about why the time, I want to move backward, about 10 to 15 years ago, when the internet started to generate content. It was the time when Facebook started to boom. These companies were suddenly faced with huge amounts of data, but didn't really have the infrastructure to deal with that data. But they had the budget and the people to build their own systems, and Hadoop, Cassandra, and Kafka were born. And with these companies implementing the first successful machine learning models, companies got hyped about technologies of AI, deep learning, artificial networks, which about looked like this, but they actually lost sight of the business impact. And what then happened was that data scientists tried to hold together complex data infrastructure clusters, but after years, management waited actually for results of these million-dollar projects that failed to materialize. So, sufficient to take a look at a very simplified version of the data hierarchy of needs to understand what went wrong. Everything starts with building a solid foundation of collecting and storing data. And afterwards, we model the data, map business logic, create consistent definitions of dimensions and metrics. And afterwards, but only afterwards, we can build applications on top of that. But this law of hierarchy was ignored. People just skipped the hiring of data engineers and directly recruited data scientists. They missed the part of actually laying a foundation and building a solid fundament. And we all know that a pyramid without a fundament has a very bad chance. But about 3 to 4 years ago, time shifted. And data articles started to talk about data analysts, DBT, data warehousing, the modern data stack arose. And what seemed to be a step backwards from like deep learning to a SQL pipeline was a super crucial and necessary correction in the market as a result of over and over again failed data projects. So why do we think that the time is now to create impact? This has mainly two reasons. The first one is a technical one. If we look to this pyramid, things look differently now. Cloud data warehouses, cheap and reliable ingestion technologies like Airbyte were a big advancement to the collection and storage layer. And we see similar development in the data modeling layer. A big catalyst for that has for sure been DBT that entirely rethought how we model data, brought new technologies and processes, but also put another importance on the data modeling. The collection and storage layer is now, as well as the data modeling layer, in most of the companies solved. The second factor why we think that the time is now comes from the business side. Businesses need the data. At Project A, we see a lot of pitch decks of startups. And one thing we see again and again is that data has become core to the value proposition of companies. We disrupt the industry because we do this cheaper by using data. We disrupt the industry because we do this more efficiently by using data. We disrupt the industry because we do this more personalized by using data. If you're nowadays building a company, you really use data to differentiate. And that's not just something we see in pitch decks, but also when we start to collaborate with the ventures. The first data hires are already made in seed stage. They're building up data strategies, assuring proper data collection. So the need and the awareness for data is bigger than ever right now. But what's the situation when we look at the applications layer? We experience that still most teams' thinking is restricted to dashboards. Marketing should work data-driven. Let's build a dashboard for them. I'm quite sure that when the industry 10 years ago talked about data changing the world, they didn't think of a Tableau dashboard, but more about data changing all processes, automations, predictions, anomaly detections. And we think that the next years will be about the creation of these and to go beyond dashboards. One of the most prominent hypotheses how this is going to look like is the data platform hypothesis by Andreessen Horowitz. It says that our data warehouses will become data platforms. So what does it take to become a data platform? In general terms, a platform is defined by a system that allows several developer teams to build up on and creating a one-to-many relationship. That would mean that we will in future distinguish between a platform layer, including the collection, storage, and transformation of the data, and an applications layer that builds on top of that and uses APIs that are provided by this platform layer. That would mean that our companies get a second backend next to our existing product backend, and these two systems need to be intensively interwoven. How this is going to look like is technically not 100% evident yet, but I'm quite sure we will hear later today more about that, and I'm especially curious what the CTOs are going to say about that. Evidence to this hypothesis is provided by industry development. We can see data storage providers putting more attention to build out APIs that other systems can build up on. And we can see an emerging number of businesses that position themselves as one of these applications built on top of these APIs. But now talking about how these applications actually going to look like. And put them roughly into the following buckets: reporting, embedded analytics, data workspaces, reverse ETL, data apps, and data products. And as we don't have the time to go into each of them now, I want to focus on three. First, it's reverse ETL. Reverse ETL means that we take the data from our data platform and reintegrate it back into operational software like our CRM or our customer service software. And by that, we create two big advancements of our impact. First, we don't work in separate workflows anymore, but actually integrate into our stakeholder workflows, and by that create the so-called modern data experience. Meaning that our business users are going to make use of our analytics without even realizing that they are right now working with data. Second big advancement is that we can go beyond just informing decisions, but actually create automations that directly impact our business operations. We see some examples in our portfolio where companies integrate their data back into the customer engagement platforms like Braze, build hyper-personalized email campaigns. And tools like HighTouch and Grouparo made this new layer very accessible already. What we at the moment still see lagging behind is collaboration of data with the stakeholders to actually identify the use cases for that, thus slowing down the growth of this. Second bucket I want to talk about are data apps. And I know this term is used in many different ways. Some people just call everything on top of the platform a data app. But we have the definition that we define data apps as software that cover vertical use cases, but don't store the data by themselves, but build on top of your data platform. Let's clarify by an example. So Puzzle is a software that's made for financial teams. Usually the data and the finance team work in quite separate worlds, which is also good reasons as finance has quite special requirements and workflows. But Puzzle wants to change that by covering these workflows, but building on top of your in-house data platform, and thus making use of your single source of truth and aligning both departments. This goes one step beyond reverse ETL, because we do not just reintegrate the data back into the operational software, but the operational software would actually be on top of our data platform. So we might face a future in which we remake our softwares, build them on top of the data platform. The third bucket I want to talk about are data products. And our team is quite convinced that with data products the biggest complexity comes, but also the biggest potential to finally increase our impact and move from being perceived as a cost to a profit center. So data products are features of your product that are very data intensive. So their main goal is around the processing of data. We can see some examples already in our portfolio. For example, at Casavo, saw you yesterday talking, the data team delivers an estimation of the selling price to a potential seller directly in the product after just answering a few questions. Or at Cru, which is a digital healthcare startup, their data team delivers the decision if a patient should be sent to a doctor or a nurse after the patient answered a few questions about symptoms. It is not always easy to say if something is now a data product or not, because it can come in many different shapes and complexity. But one requirement is for sure, it's client-facing and directly impacting our client's experience. And with this, the biggest complexity comes, as we cannot just say, our pipeline is broken, we'll fix it next week. It has to be up and running with a super high reliability. And we think that we need changes for that. So we think that the structure and roles of our data teams are going to change. The data analyst is going to split into new roles. We can, for example, at the moment already see analytics engineers coming up, with data analysts getting more technical expertise and building up the transformations. But we should not make the mistake now to relabel all data analysts as analytics engineers, as these are still two separate roles. If we miss out the business analysts, we miss out actually the part of bringing the value into the company and communicating it. As well, we think there will be more data product owners. Those will lead squads of engineers and have to be proficient in agile software development workflows. If we contribute to a company's product, we finally have to take this data as a product mindset seriously and adjust our methodologies. So how about the data engineer? I think most of the discussion out there about change in roles is for sure about them, with this new analytics engineer coming up. What are data engineers going to do now? At Project A, our data engineering team grew from 3 to 8 people in 12 months. And I think this shows that we do not believe in the downfall of data engineering. It will become even more important, but it will be different. We think that data engineers will get more technical expertise. If crucial operations of our company are based on our data platform, it isn't sufficient to say we follow best practices by using separate project and staging environment and version control systems. We think that we will converge towards the standards of software engineering. And we can already see this trend with more data platforms being developed with CI/CD pipelines, infrastructure as code, rigorous peer review process. So how about the data scientists then? We experience that very often the challenge of machine learning is not actually writing the code. Models are getting commoditized. If you're nowadays doing something around natural language processing, you probably won't start from scratch, but build on top of something that's out there like GPT. And the very most companies won't have the need for super specific ML models. It will be sufficient for them to use these commoditized models and to apply some downstream to fine-tune them. Which means that we believe that we will in future see more machine learning with less data scientists. These new roles will not only be filled by data native people. We think that the background of our data teams is going to be more diverse than ever. We will see DevOps engineers, software engineers, researchers, UX designers, psychologists join the data team to fill these new requirements. Next to the new roles, we also think we're going to need new processes. And one set of new processes is about the clear focus and measurement of business impact. That's something we still see a lot of data teams struggling with, as it's quite hard to measure financial impact of a dashboard. But with more budgets going into data teams, also the pressure on actually saying a number, what this is going to bring, will increase. Happily, this is going to become easier to some extent, as measuring the improvement of like automation or personalization engine is easier than the provision of a chart. The second set of new processes will be about reliability. And I already mentioned this topic a couple of times, but it will just be core to this new era of data. We have to set new standards because data systems are going to become production systems. So we think that we will see on-call rotation in data teams, meaning that we will have 24/7 shift systems that ensure that there's always somebody on call who can fix potential upcoming incidents. And also, we're going to see internal contracts coming up. Data team will need to commit to service level agreements about reliability and measurability of the services. So what's the situation if we take a more high-level look? Where are these data teams going to sit? We think that with these new applications, data leaders need strategic exposure. If they want to contribute to a company's strategy and play a core role, they need to identify bottlenecks and get aware of opportunities where data can have the biggest leverage. Hiding the teams somewhere in tech, finance, or marketing will prohibit the data teams from leveraging the full potential of the team. So we think that the data teams are going to catch up with the size, with the budget, and with the variety of applications of the tech team. But we might also foresee for the more long-term, like 5 to 10 years, that the data platform might not just be the second backend of a company, but might become the backend of companies. Companies follow a data-first approach. And as I'm now coming to an end, I want to leave you with one hypothesis that I'm also happy to discuss about later. I think not everybody will agree, but we think that with these new developments, people who right now work in data are also going to take over the CTO roles of these. So